Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, Reiki master, angel therapy practitioner, and empowerment coach. And I'm here today to talk about the beginning of the Mars retrograde. I say the beginning because Mars is going to be in Gemini for a total of 7 months by the time all of this is said and done. And I believe that there are such pivotal transitions that are going on, transits, aspects, that I sort of want to break this down. Today is October 25th, 2022. And what I'm going to cover is Mars retrograde starting October 30th, and I'm going to take it till November 8th. And the reason I picked November 8th is because it's an election day here in the United States. And the transits that are happening right now, I think, are going to have an influence on that event, which will have an influence on the world at large. You know, not everyone will be directly impacted by it, but the ripple effect will be there. So, real quickly, this is just going to be a general transit. I'm going to do a separate video on Mars's retrograde by rising sign. So you can come back in a few days and look for your rising sign to see what area of life this will affect you most. But right now, this is going to be a general sort of, as some of astrologers call it, weather report. So Mars entered Gemini on August 20th, 2022, and proceeded to move forward. In that time, we've seen here in the United States an escalation again of aggression. Mars rules aggression. It rules the military. It rules combat and competition. It rules frustration and anger and unforgiveness. It rules resentment. It also rules courage, the hero, honor and achievement, success. It rules weapons of all kinds, and as you would imagine, being ruling the military. There is a pioneering spirit to Mars. It's willing to go alone as is necessary for the needs of many. It is the first energy that the soul experiences when it comes into this world, meaning the first house is ruled by Aries. So it's about the self-assertion. So what we're seeing here as Mars has gone into Gemini, Gemini ruling our neighborhoods, what we think, what we speak, what we teach, writing, media, information, short bits of information, quick movement. Gemini is very quick, as is Mars. Gemini rules teammates, workmates, siblings, neighborhoods, social platforms with small bits of information like TikTok and Twitter. It rules e-commerce, communications, early education, school-age children. It rules gossip and fake news. When we saw Mars enter Gemini, we started to see sort of this inflammation and this acceleration of an awareness in these areas. And as we have gone all the way to the 25th degree. Now, I, as an intuitive astrologer, believe that each sign, when it's broken down into thirds, represents a period of time and learning and awareness within that sign or house. So as we see Mars starting its retrograde at the 25th degree of Gemini, that is the Aries degree. So we see this sort of double whammy of being aggressive, being Martian in the sense of a warrior energy, and now an awareness to that. Getting an opportunity as we move retrograde, it will move all the way back to the 8th degree of Gemini, and then it will move forward again, ending its sojourn in Gemini on March 24th, 2023, when the next day it will move into Cancer. And I think this is super important because the first 10 degrees of a sign or house kind of represent a newness to the energy, a certain learning curve. When we go into the second 10 degrees, I feel like we're really starting to hone our skills, starting to really have intentional awareness. And as we get into the later degrees of a sign, I believe we're being tasked to master those energies, to use them with a intentional and a wise and a sort of a sage. So I think this is super important. And I also want to bring up real quickly that as Gemini goes through the latter parts of this retrograde and then into its forward motion again, Pluto is going to be moving closer and closer to Aquarius. So this comes into play and becomes quite an influencer. And while they don't necessarily, technically there's a trine, I believe, between these two. I have to think backwards now, but they're both air signs. So there is Aquarius and Gemini are complementary, but this is a temporary move for Pluto. So I think it's going to be a culmination of what we have learned during Mars's retrograde in the house of thinking, speaking, writing, and teaching. The house, in many ways, it represents our everyday lives. And if those lives are aligned to what we want to experience on this planet. I want to also kind of forewarned is forearmed, because as we go through some of these transits, a lot of unconscious people will be acting in a reactionary way. Mars moves very quickly and sometimes very impulsively. It kind of charges ahead before it really surveys the landscape or the situation. And that's what's necessary for a hero to be able to go into a high adrenaline situation and be able to operate on instinct rather than thinking everything out when you don't have time to. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is we're going through a very specific period of time now, October 30th through November 8th. On Halloween, we will see Mars. It's still at 25 degrees. We're going to be hanging out 25 degrees, moving retrograde for quite some time. And I want to bring up the idea that in the United States chart, because now I'm talking about Gemini, right? I'm talking about Mars being in Gemini, and everybody who lives in the United States, on some level, Gemini will rule our neighborhoods within our homeland. We could get technical and say that Cancer rules patriotism, but we're talking about moving on our roadways, our escalators, within our communities, all within the same country. So I believe because of what's going on with the United States chart, this is very important. Transiting Mercury on the 31st, Halloween night, will be at 2 degrees Scorpio. The sun will be at 8 degrees Scorpio. Venus will be at 10 degrees Scorpio. And the south node will be at 13 degrees Scorpio. In the US natal chart, we have an exact trine where the sun in Cancer will be at 13 or is at 13 degrees, and it will make an exact trine to the south node. The rest of the planets will be making a trine to the United States natal Venus and natal Jupiter. Venus being at 3 degrees Cancer and Jupiter being at 5 degrees Cancer. So to me, there is an expansion. And in some ways, I still feel a disruptive energy because Mars's influence in Gemini is playing in some ways to this, because there is a square that happens between Neptune and Mars. And I'm going to go into that a little bit as I move forward, because the United States here with this trine has an opportunity to really look at how we are thinking about our money, how we are projecting ourselves out into the world. The sun in Scorpio, am I projecting the truth of who I am, my innermost self? I feel very much that this first part of this retrograde is going to be, as a community, focused on on the rules and the regulations, on what we're doing in the way of this election, how this election will affect everyday lives. Mercury in Scorpio, making a trine to Venus in Cancer. Venus here representing a receiving energy, a nurturing energy in some respects because of the Cancer dynamic. And it's also at the 3 degrees, which is the Geminian degree. So we're really thinking about things. We're really thinking about, are we feeling nurtured? Are we feeling like we're thriving? Do we feel like things are probable and possible? Because there's a long-standing square between not only transit Neptune, which is at around 22, 23 degrees Pisces, but also the United States natal Neptune, which is at 22 degrees Virgo. So we see Mars here in Gemini making this aspect that's going to bring up and remove any sort of deceit, illusion, escapism. The dark side of Neptune is mental illness, loss, delusion, isolation, hospitalization, feeling very out of touch with myself in the physical world. The high side and the more evolved version of Neptune is compassionate, it is spiritual, it is connected to the other side, really able to get into deep levels of meditation that provide information, that illuminates why the soul goes through some challenging experiences. I was going to say transiting experiences. So we're going to have this square with Mars being the co-ruler of Scorpio. There is, we usually assign this to Pluto, but Mars was the original lord of the manor before Pluto was discovered in 1977. So we see Mars challenging us to dig deep and be brave where there may be illusions, and how we're going to take action on that. Will we be brave? Because Pisces by nature gives up some of their, Neptune sometimes gives up their intention and allows themselves to be overly cooperative, is how I want to put it. So I think that trine is going to start, the trine between the United States, Venus, Jupiter, and the Sun, and the transiting Sun, Mercury, and Venus in the South Node is going to start to tee up a reflection, a passion, a wanting more harmony, more peace, more kumbaya, for lack of a better term. And we also have on Halloween night, Halloween day, we have transit Pluto now moving forward at 26 degrees Capricorn, making a conjunction to the moon at 27 degrees Capricorn. The moon is heading into another eclipse in Taurus on the 8th of November, and I'll get to that. But this Pluto moon, the transit is conjunct the United States natal Pluto, which is at 27 degrees Capricorn. So I think there's going to be a very strong emotional day. I feel like with the moon there, the transformation that we're going through, the idea that Pluto rules some more challenging dynamics of, we say death and decay, it rules criminal behavior, it rules big banking and finance, it rules things underneath the surface, criminal behavior, coercion, power, control, manipulation, issues of intimacy, sex, and it rules other people's money. So it rules stockbrokers and bankers and mortgage brokers and things like that, inheritances and taxes. So there may be a lot of emotions surrounded around Plutonian and transformational energies. And there may be even an intuitive energy that comes up that sparks something inside of you that's saying, there is intrigue among us. There is something happening. Because I believe that we're getting these layers of information through the various aspects. And we know that Saturn and Uranus are making a square and have been making a long-standing square. They've been moving away from each other, then coming back into position. And this has been giving us opportunities for reflection within their dynamic of structure and innovation. So I think that with Pluto coming in conjunction with the moon, there's going to be a very strong feeling and wanting transformation. And the moon represents nurturing. It represents the motherly experience. It represents our patriotism and our homeland. It really is the whole country, whereas Gemini rules the cities and states within the country. On the 2nd, the moon will transit into Aquarius, and then it will meet the natal moon of the United States in Aquarius at the 27th degree. This is going to represent the Geminian degree. Again, we're seeing this idea of thought. And I believe that a lot of thought is being transformed right now. The permissions we give ourselves to no longer do what is expected of us, what we've been taught to do, even if it didn't feel authentic to us. And that's why this comes in so powerfully for me, because I'm always talking about checking your moon sign. The moon, we build on our emotional body, and having the transit moon in Aquarius on this day, we may feel very, very much that we want liberation. We want expansion. We want to feel more humanitarian, more, I love my brother as I love myself. This feels like this is something that we have been really calling forth for years now. We've seen this with various movements over the last few years. On the 4th of November, we're going to see the moon at 23 degrees Pisces position itself between Neptune at 22 degrees retrograde Pisces and Jupiter having just re-entered Pisces at 29 degrees retrograde. This is going to make a square to the United States natal Mars in Gemini at 21 degrees in the 7th house of partnerships. I think that this is really very much going to start to really bring, again, more expansion, more awareness of any illusions, deceptions, any power trips over the feminine, over the reproductive, as is represented by the moon. Neptune is calling forth a more spiritual, a more connected, a more compassionate experience, and really wants to remove any of the illusions. And I really think that Jupiter is coming into this square, expanding us in ways that is calling us to move into a new direction, like almost like a foreign territory. And I think this could be the power of the people. And I don't mean it in like the uprise in a war as much as I mean we are more aware of our connection with other humans and how that connection is integral to our experience and our soul's evolution. And that oftentimes when we deem something disruptive, it actually has a way of clearing things out and giving us a more concise picture of where we want to go. Because we are, throughout the theme of this whole week or 2 weeks almost, is Mars transiting Mars retrograde at 25 degrees Gemini. So along with the idea that the moon, transiting moon, is sitting between Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces, very emotional, very watery, very spiritual, very wanting to believe that the world is a better place and can be a better place, is going to be in a conflicting conversation with the planet of war, which is stationed at 25 degrees Gemini in transit and is positioned at 21 degrees in the United States natal chart. This is a revision of how the United States thinks, how we speak, how we interact with one another. And there is the potential that the original aggression we saw in Mars moving in its initial sojourn through Gemini, seeing these people having these real reactionary and violent and aggressive posturings, now we may see that start to be rethought, rethunk, for lack of a better term, reevaluated. And I don't know that the masses will do that, because Gemini kind of rules, again, our community. So I feel that there will be portions of us throughout our communities that will be aware and holding space for this balancing act that we're looking for. On the 8th now, we come to our full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus. On election day, expect the unexpected. The moon will be conjunct Uranus, 16 degrees Taurus. We know that the north node is hanging out. It's about 13 degrees Taurus right now. So they're within a 3-degree orb. There's a real culmination of feeling. There's a culmination and now a willingness to no longer feel disempowered by rules, regulations, stipulations that do not serve us thriving. I really feel like this Uranus aspect throws in something that no matter how much we try to anticipate, no matter how much we try to project, unexpected events will happen, and they will be shocking and present a certain amount of awe. And also at the same time, we know that when we have a full moon, we have an opposition between the sun and the moon. So the sun in Scorpio at 16 degrees is conjunct Mercury, 15 degrees Scorpio, and Venus, 20 degrees Scorpio. So throughout this whole first period of time during Mars retrograde, we're seeing this influence of Mercury, the influence of Venus, the idea that Mercury rules Gemini, Venus rules our money. She's going to be the ruler of this lunar eclipse. So there is going to be the beginning of thoughts about individualizing ourselves, liberating ourselves, making money in ways that doesn't tether us to something that is eroding to our health, eroding to our mental health, adding stress to our lives, and feeling disgruntled. And I also want to bring up that the idea of the moon, a lunar eclipse being conjunct Uranus, can bring extreme weather. Uranus rules lightning, it rules airway travel, the moon rules water. So there could be storms that kind of come out of nowhere. There could be unexpected lightning, even explosions of some kind. So I want to offer this in sort of culmination for this period of time. With this information and knowing that it's really how adept you can be at being aware when you transit or you traverse these transits, because for every dark, there's a light. For every night, there is a day. And as we play to the higher vibrations that some of this divine disruption offers us, we also represent the balance. We represent the possibilities. We represent thriving during times when others may feel that we're shutting down. So I think that there's a lot of good to be had here. And I want to offer the idea that if you have an intuitive hit about something, if you just have a feeling like, you know what, I don't know if I like the way that alley looks, I'm not going to turn down that alley, or, you know, something, I just really, today is a day I can't quite make it into work. And maybe I don't have a good enough reason, but just the way I'm feeling is telling me, just take the day off. Honor that feeling. Honor your feelings during the next few weeks. Honor them in such a way that you're willing to dig deep into whether they're fear-based, they're habitually based, or they're inspired by spirit. Because oftentimes there is a commingling of those feelings. And we have to differentiate whether we're giving into something that isn't serving us and surrendering to that defeatism, or whether spirit is inspiring us to trust our intuition, and we really won't know how it plays out until it plays out. And I can't help but think about the people of 9/11 and how some of them said, you know, I was supposed to be at work that day, but my kid got sick and I ended up taking the day off, or I got a flat tire, or I felt sick and I didn't go into work. If anything like that comes up for you, honor it. Honor it. And I'm not saying that there's another 9/11 happening, but us starting to trust our inner knowing, starting to get off the hamster wheel that Gemini can sometimes represent in our everyday activities, running here and there to make sure things get done versus actually being present within the moment, I think will serve us well. I am going to be doing a separate video. I mentioned, I think, this at the beginning of this video within the next few days, which will look at this transit and the houses based on your rising sign, where Gemini is based for you on your rising sign. This will give you a little bit more personal insight, but because of this powerful transit lasting over half a year. Normally, Mars is only in a sign for 2 months. This is extremely powerful and pivotal and giving us an opportunity to be brave and courageous and heroic in what we think, we speak, we act, and how we educate others about our being. Okay, that's me, Teri Hunter. Peace out, everybody. I'll see you soon.